Well, welcome to Charles Darwin University and the TEP025 Bioscience course. This is the first of our weekly videos in which we cover the major topics in the weekly materials for each week. These videos follow a similar format to the PowerPoint presentation. Some people prefer a visual format through a video, and so this is for those people. Now, we're studying the human body and anatomy and physiology. Anatomy is the study of the structure and shape of the body and its parts, whereas physiology is how the body and its parts work. And of course, the two are closely related. One depends on the other. Now, we have two levels of study in anatomy. We have gross anatomy, and gross is different in its meaning to the common use of that term. It means those structures that we can see with our own eyes, whereas microscopic anatomy is what we can see through the microscope. And another term for that is histology, Histology. Now, an organism has various levels of structure, and we'll just briefly go through those. The simplest and most basic level is at the atom level. We don't study too much of that. We do study a little bit of the next level, though, in this course, and at the molecular level. We study a little bit of organic chemistry and biochemistry, and also various ions, IONS. And molecules are built up into cells, and we have a whole unit on cells. And then the cells are built up into tissues. Tissues are made up of cells of a similar type. You see smooth muscle illustrated there. The next level up is the organ level, where there are a number of different tissue types put together to form an organ. And then going up to the next level is the body system level, and this shows the cardiovascular system, and we spend quite a bit of time on that in this course. And then systems are formed together to make up an organism, in this case a human, and they all work together so that an organism can function effectively. And we'll get a bit of an idea about how that works in this course. Now, there are some basic life functions that all organisms need to have. They need to maintain boundaries, to keep the inside in and the outside out. They need to be able to move. They need to be able to respond to their environment. They need to be able to digest food that they take in, and then to be able to metabolize it into the compounds that they need. Waste products, they need to be able to excrete, get rid of. Of course, they need to be able to reproduce, and they need to be able to grow. There are some basic elements that we need to survive. We need nutrients, which get by digestion and metabolism. We need oxygen from the air. We need water. Our body is largely made up of water, a very important compound. We need to have a stable body temperature within quite a narrow range, and we need the air to be at a certain pressure, as it is on Earth. Now, this is quite an important slide, which we're going to return to time and time again. It's a generic model of homeostasis. Homeostasis is how the body maintains its internal environment within a narrow range. and there's many different ways in which it does that. We will cover some of them in this course. But just to go through the model, at the bottom we've got a balance, and let's talk in terms of body temperature. We need to maintain our body temperature within a certain range, and if we're in an environment that shifts the temperature either too hot or too cold, the stimulus is the change in temperature, it changes the balance, and the body needs to respond to that. And it does that initially through receptors or a sensor that detects the change in temperature in this case, and it sends a message along what's called an afferent pathway, AFFERENT, to a control center. In the case of body temperature, the control center is in the hypothalamus in the brain. It then sends messages to an effector. Effectors are parts of the body that initiate a change to bring the balance back to normal. So in this case, the effectors are sweat glands to produce sweat, so we can reduce body heat that way, and to increase circulation through the skin, so that more heat is radiated from the skin. And as the effectors change the balance back to within the normal range, then they are switched off. So that's called a negative feedback mechanism. Very important, this, and so you'll come back to this generic model on a number of different occasions. Now there's some anatomical terms that we need to understand. Anatomy has its own language, and in particular relates to the anatomical position, to directional terms, and to body planes and sections. So the first is the anatomical position, and this is the position with the person standing facing us, with their feet flat on the floor and their palms facing towards us. Now the reason that that's important is that's a standard position which we can then use to describe the relationship of body parts to each other. Now there are some directional terms as well, which I'll just briefly go through. This is from your book. So superior is towards the head end or upper part of the body. Inferior is towards the lower part of the body. Students get confused between anterior and posterior. So anterior is towards the front of the body, and it's also called the ventral surface. So, for example, the palms of the hand is the ventral surface of the hand. Posterior is towards the back, so our back is posterior surface. Medial is towards the center. Lateral is away from the center or the midline. And then there's a term intermediate which describes something that's in between medial and lateral. Now, proximal is close to the origin of the body part, towards the center. Distal is away from the origin of the body. So the shoulder, for example, is proximal to the hand, but the hand is distal to the elbow. The feet are distal to the knees. The hips are proximal to the knees. And then superficial is towards the body surface, and internal is away from the body surface. There are these are the main body cavities, and they're divided into two parts: the dorsal body cavity, which is made up of the cranial cavity and the spinal cord. And then we've got a ventral cavity, which is made up of the thoracic cavity, the abdominal cavity, and the pelvic cavity. And the pelvis and abdomen together make up the abdominopelvic cavity. Now, there's some really important body planes, and you investigate these in the lab part of this week's course. Looking at the left, we're looking at what's called the mid-sagittal plane. It's one that goes through the midline of the body, from the head right through. And if a plane is either side of the midline, it's called a sagittal section. Now, the frontal or coronal plane is one that goes down either to the back or the front of the body, as you can see there. And then a transverse plane is a cross section of the body. And you'll see in your books some examples of these from an MRI, and it shows you why these planes are so important. Okay, well, that's all for this week, and I hope you enjoy the course, and we look forward to working with you.